After all the revelations out of Washington, D.C., and all the testimony today, it seems very, very clear that Joe Biden, assuming everything we've heard is true, is up to his eyeballs in corruption through his son, Hunter Biden. And a lot of that involves the Chinese Communist government. Joining me now to discuss on the KVI studio line, serving Georgia's 6th Congressional District, Congressman and Dr. Rich McCormick. Thank you so much for being with us today, sir.
It is my pleasure to be with you today.
Such a pleasure to have you. So when I'm looking at this stuff, there's the things people say. Oh, Trump is corrupt. Oh, Biden's corrupt. Oh, whatever. I see a smoking gun here, if not a whole lot more. What's your take on the situation?
Yeah, I agree. I hope we'll continue to grab the evidence that's out there and use it to get more people involved that are nefarious and have them squeal on each other and eventually bring down the big guy, as they say. I think there's a lot of smoking guns. There's a lot of accounts. There's a lot of Biden family members involved. I hope we also can expose the DOJ as corrupt simultaneously and deal with them accordingly.
I completely agree. I mean, especially because all the stuff with the Chinese Communist Party, I mean, it doesn't seem like anybody's holding them accountable for COVID at all. I mean, you're a doctor. You saw all this stuff firsthand.
Well, we've just had hearings on it. I'm part of the COVID special select committee. I'm an ER doctor who served during the entire pandemic. I served my last ER shift on December 28th. Actually intubated a patient. They're definitely responsible when you talk about origins and the way they're trying to throw us off, whether it be Fauci or any of the other people that had their now defunct theories on where this came from. It's obvious it didn't come from a dog or a cat or a bat. It came from a lab. We know it. They covered it up. They've destroyed evidence. They wouldn't give any transparency. And now, of course, we're having problems bringing them to the table to actually come and account for it. And if we can't expose the truth, how are we supposed to prepare for the next problem?
Right. I completely agree. In fact, it seems like a lot of people don't want to discuss the bad decisions they made during COVID. It seems like everybody's trying to sweep that under the rug. And we know that one person who was getting it right most of the time was Governor Ron DeSantis down there in Florida, which is why so many people were moving to Florida. I mean, even President Trump was going with what Fauci wanted to do, and Governor DeSantis wasn't going that way. He was talking about taking on China this weekend. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is exactly what he's shown in his leadership when it was this state. He's taken on people who do the wrong thing. That's why he had such a successful governorship. That's why his popularity rose by almost 20 points while he took on the woke left, while he took on failed policies, while he took on corruption. I think that's what he's doing with China. China has been a bad actor. If you look how they manipulated their currency, how they use slave labor, how they warp markets, how they use other countries, and then discard any World Trade Organization regulations. They cheat. We've had to take them to court, I think, over 20 times, but they continue to cheat. They have to be treated just like they are, which is the cheaters that manipulate currencies and ruin economies all over the world while trying to put themselves on top. Ron DeSantis isn't playing that game, and he'll play hardball.
So then looking at some of the things he's proposing, I mean, we got the Chinese buying farmlands. We're finding illegal Chinese drug labs and virus labs in California, in Fresno County. How do you plan to address all this? How does he plan to take all this on?
Well, first thing you do is you expose it. The fact that he's calling them out in a national, he's the one presidential candidate that I love the fact that he's actually coming up with a plan. He's saying, look, we not only have a problem, I have a plan to deal with it. And that's one of the reasons I've supported him from the very beginning, is because he does want to crack down on the corruption. He does want to make sure that they don't have the ability to buy a bunch of farmland in the United States, to buy land near military installations. The fact that he is a military guy who has consequential experiences that are going to help him make the right decisions to stand up to the CCP and their corruption and their gaining traction here in the United States. That needs to be stood up against, because they're definitely our biggest and baddest enemy we've had in a very long time.
We're talking with Congressman Rich McCormick, serving Georgia's 6th Congressional District, and he's also a doctor, as you heard a little bit earlier in this interview. So speaking with your medical expertise, Ron DeSantis has said very, very clearly he wants to get rid of Fauci, and that's become almost a rallying cry for the Republican Party. Fauci's already gone. Are we talking about prosecuting him? I heard Rand Paul talking about that this weekend. What can actually be done to make him accountable for all the mistakes he made during the pandemic?
Well, one of the things we're doing, we're exposing him in our hearings. I think we're going to be bringing him in later in the year to actually call him to the carpet for things he said and done. the emails we've exposed, the things that he's claimed that were untrue, the manipulation of this disease process, and how he had no consequential accountability for how he affected the economy, how he affected the outcome medically. This is one nice thing about Ron DeSantis. He's never backed down from this fight. He's never kowtowed to the leverage points that Fauci has used against us as the medical profession. And I'm telling you, as an ER doc, I was censored, even though I'm the one treating patients. I'm the one that has the consequences of my actions and what I decide. We were censored by people who never saw a patient, who didn't know anything about science or medicine, and it was all through big government. That's one thing that I like about Ron DeSantis. He stood up to that the entire time and done his own thing in Florida and had great results in both his economy and also medically. He hasn't had any worse outcomes than any other state. In fact, probably better than most states, despite opening up his economy right away.
We're talking with Dr. and Congressman Rich McCormick, serving Georgia's 6th Congressional District. And speaking of censorship and stuff, I mean, big tech was a big part of that. What's the plan to go after Facebook? I mean, Twitter's doing its own thing right now, and it seems like that's better than it was before. But you still have Google, you still have YouTube, you still have Facebook, you still got Disney. I mean, what's the way to really go head-to-head with all these things?
Well, first of all, we need to make sure that we're actually on an even playing field. The government can help with that, but I think one of the greatest things we have is the silent majority is when we actually unite under a common banner, we have real power. Look at what happened when they tried to go after Chick-fil-A, and we stood up for a company that we believe represent our values. Look what happened when they try to censor child trafficking, when they have a movie about it and they talk about having Hollywood ignore and try not to propagate this movie throughout the United States. Look what's happened. We are powerful. The silent majority has a lot of power, both economically, in our votership, in the way we message, as long as we stand up for what we believe. And I think we need to have a real movement away from these venues that are absolutely against our values. And if we do that collectively, we don't advertise on these venues. And even we as politicians have to be careful. I know we have a lot of voters out there on Facebook. We need to start pushing people towards venues that are friendly towards the conservative message and fighting back with our checkbook, not just with regulatory issues that we bring up in Congress.
You bring up a great point about that, because look what's happening over at Bud Light. Anheuser-Busch is laying off tons of employees. They're concerned if Bud Light is ever going to regain its status as king of all beers after all the insanity going on there. That's pushing back against it. Now, one of the hits against Governor Ron DeSantis is the Disney thing. And the way I always explain it to people is, why do you think Disney should be on a different playing field than, say, Universal, than, say, SeaWorld, than, say, any of these other amusement parks? Why does Disney get the special treatment, and then, because they get out of all these requirements, get to spend their time lobbying against the American people? What say you?
Well, first of all, you bring up a great point about Bud Light. And what's funny is Budweiser's been a fairly conservative company. If you look where their donations have been, it's been towards conservative, not liberal politicians. And they're being punished because they made a mistake in the way they handled this transgender issue. And you can see the mighty power of a conservative movement. But when it comes to Disney, I think you're right. They've gone out of their way to really embrace things that are unhealthy for children. And since what they represent traditionally is a venue for children and for marketing to children, I think they have to be handled just like anybody else. First of all, we have to make sure that we don't have our children poisoned by a message that we don't like, that they're not getting special treatment and advantages to propagate that bad message for children. And I think what Ron DeSantis did, and has been misrepresented a lot of times by the liberal media, is stand up against somebody who wants to poison the minds of children and then has special privilege to do so, both financially and economically. And I think they need to be held accountable. And I think he's really good at doing those sort of things.
Congressman Rich McCormick, serving Georgia's 6th Congressional District. Thank you so much for fighting for all of us. Thank you for joining us today on the show. We really do appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you too. And remember, guys, this is not about the drama. This is about actually getting things done. Let's support the right candidate and make sure we bring it home. Thanks so much. God bless you.
God bless you as well, sir. Really appreciate you joining us today.